Hey everybody, my next guest is a nationally touring comedian, writer, and occasional TV and radio personality. He has made numerous appearances on ABC's hidden camera show What Would You Do, and can currently be seen as a recurring role as Billy Jones on Amazon's The Marvelous Miss Maisel. Here he is, folks, Kevin Bartini. Kevin, how you doing, man?
Hey man, I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Dude, this is awesome that you're on here, man. Been seeing you here and there performing all these different places, and definitely on Miss Maisel, the marvelous Miss Maisel. What a great show that is, man. And this is the last season, huh? Or it was the last season.
It's all over. And I was fortunate enough, even though I had a very small role on the show, to have been invited to the wrap party for that. So for the whole series, and I got to bring my wife. It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. And of course, the whole cast was there, and I got to meet Kevin Pollak and Tony Shalhoub. It was I was a fan of that show from the get-go. My mother's favorite show. Like my wife loves. We all love the show. So anytime I've been fortunate and lucky in my career somehow that I've managed to end up working on numerous shows that I'm like a big fan of. People in my family are a big fan of. That makes it a little bit, a little cooler.
Yeah, true indeed. And to be part of, like, how many episodes were you on? Like, because you were kind of, yeah, because I remember your character, like you definitely stood out. Like, that character kind of stands out. And then to be part of the rap party and to say goodbye to a show with 4 seasons, but 4 impactful seasons. It was like a groundbreaking type of a show, period piece, all that. Dude, that must have been one heck of a rap party, man.
Dude, oh my God, it was so ornate and huge, and obviously it just it was. I don't even know how to describe it. It was so cool. I'll tell you a story about doing Mrs. Maisel is, first of all, because I did love the show long before I got to do it. And I had auditioned for at least once or twice before and not gotten cast. So like the role of Eugene, which was another comic, I was up for that one. I didn't get that.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so this is a story I actually told to Rachel Brosnahan herself. So I was at Stand Up New York on 78th and Broadway one night a couple years ago, and I did a spot, and I live on the Upper West Side, and so I'm walking home, and I walk along 79th Street, and they were filming that day at a bar called the Tap House, and I just walked by, and if you're a New Yorker, and especially an Upper West Sider, you get pretty jaded to camera crews being around and things being filmed, and it's a minor curiosity. But I walked past, and she was standing right in front of the thing, just kind of on a break, just in full costume. And I'm now entering my 25th year since I first did stand up, and I don't get jaded, or I am jaded. I don't get freaked out about celebrities or anything.
Right.
So I'm just walking by, don't even break my stride, but we make eye contact. And I just said, I love your show. Keep up the great work. And that was it. And anyway, so it's a couple years later, and now I'm in the van after a rehearsal on my second episode that I did with them. And they were taking us back to our trailers, and I'm talking to Rachel about this, and, how out of character was for me even to do it. And I said, and the whole kicker to this is, here I am 2 years later, I'm doing my second, show on the thing, and I show up to set today, and my trailer was right in front of that same bar, right in front of the.
Wow.
So it was just this kind of like cool
full
little
circle. Yeah, full
Absolutely.
circle.
Excuse me, miss. This turkey is very dry.
That's food that someone brought from home. I can't help it.
Excuse me, miss, more Chianti? That's wine that someone brought from home. Jesus Christ.
I'll be leading the whole room in saying grace. You gotta say grace at Thanksgiving, so be ready.
I don't know grace.
I do.
Great ass. You got you.
Before I ever started stand-up comedy, or at the very same time, I worked in a theater in Massachusetts for the summer, and I ended up moving down here with another dude, two other guys from that theater company. Right? One of them is bartends throughout town, and I would go do spots and then end up at his bar and drink all night, and we would take a cab home. And he introduces me one night to a person at the bar who was another young comic who was kind of in one of the entry-level positions at The Daily Show. And then 8 years later, that guy is the executive producer of The Daily Show, who I'd maintained a friendship with, who has me called up and given an audition for the show and ends up hiring me. And it's just like, if I hadn't have done that theater festival, stayed away 15 years ago, and met that one dude and hit it off and moved on, all these things had to happen just for me to be in the conversation for that life-changing job. You know what I mean? It's
dude. That's why I'm always nice to everybody. I'm nice to my interns.
Yeah,
I'm nice because you never know who you're talking to, where they're going to end up in life, or where you're going to end up, and all it's all a chain. We're all connected and in
so
some
hard
way.
Not only do you not know, but it's so hard to tell. Like, we sadly we lost Al Martin this
man,
week,
that was
owner of
very sad.
New York Comedy Club and a bunch of clubs, was a great champion of mine, and I knew him since 2001, and
wow, God bless.
And it got me, just on that, the you never know thing. It's gotten me thinking back to the early days and reading all these people's posts about it and people I've forgotten about and stuff. And just thinking back to when I was a baby comic 25 years, God, 25 years ago. The people that were in my group or even a class ahead of me and all that, I think now about people and it's like, wow, I got it totally wrong. There was that guy that I really thought something, he had a potential I thought I would be seeing, and I haven't seen or heard of that person in 23 years. And this guy could be dead for all I know. And then other people, and I'm not going to get into names, but some of the, there's a handful of, we'll just call my contemporaries of people my age, or we kind of started with the same, who are, exponentially further along in the business than I ever would have guessed. So it's, it is really tough sometimes.
Well, let's see, 25 years you came up in the New York scene.
Yeah.
Like I'm just trying to figure out your class, so to speak.
Well, let's see. That
was Bergazzi and them, were they before you or after you?
Nate Bergazzi definitely was. Nate Bergazzi and I used to get confused for one another constantly.
Yeah, I could see that.
Physically, I never really saw it, and he never really saw it. But back in the day, 15, 20 years ago, we both would have been up for the same roles if you were casting something. We were
right,
doughy white 20-something dudes.
Right.
And to the point that like people would come up to me and say, "Oh, I saw you do it. I saw you on the Conan or something like that." And there's a show I never was on, and I knew right away. I'm like, "I know they're talking about." So each time Nate and I would cross paths, it would be almost like the Pony Express or something. Like, here, I have these compliments I needed to pass on to you, and fills my sack right back up. So, but no, Nate's funny. But no, there's I don't know that I would have called, picked Nate out all those years ago to be where he is. No disrespect to him, he's very funny.
No, right? Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
But there's plenty of people. The guys like Joe List was kind of around the same time as me. Vera Eisenberg, Jordan Carlos and Michelle Buteau. There's a bunch of people who are still around, and definitely still working and working hard. And it's cool. It's cool seeing them outside of comedy clubs and in other aspects of showbiz. And that's, it's like it's like you pop onto a set or something one day and so-and-so is a guest on the show, or so-and-so's got another role. And it's like your old mini high school reunion or something, because you really don't. That's the tough thing about being friends with comedians and guys you come up with, is at some point you both are going to be busy, and you're both going to be busy in different realms and different parts of the universe, and years can go by and you don't cross paths.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Now, like back to the Maisel with Billy Jones. Was he a real person, like historically a real person, or did?
I don't think so. The only people in it that were really historic, was Lenny Bruce, but beyond that, everybody else was some sort of a composite of others. And
because I didn't know if they told you. Like I didn't know if they said, "Hey, this is Billy Jones. He's kind of like this, or he's like this guy."
Well, you get a breakdown when you audition for a role. So they had a physical idea of who he was, and not a huge backstory. But if you, the themes of Mrs. Maisel and the story of Mrs. Maisel was pretty cut and dry. He was, and you pick up the context clues from what's in the scene, and so my whole scene, which was how cool was this, was just having Midge and Susie call me a hack. He's such a fucking hack. Look at him, hack, and it's just cutting me. I was like, I want this role. So,
Billy Jones? Oh, shit, they've hit the bottom of the bottom. Billy Jones. Even stands like a hack.
First off,
she wants a job. Can you believe that? I says to her, sweetie, you got 2 jobs already that you never show up for. Hand and blow.
And it isn't Bunk Borden. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Get up and do your act, Billy. She just did it.
But better, and in heels.
And really all Billy Jones was just a hack comic, just another guy, another white male, part of the patriarchy comedian that's getting the stage time that's not as good as her, and that she's resentful of. So, you didn't have to go too broad with it or anything else. It was just, the role I was born to play.
We got to make a spin-off series just about Billy Jones' story.
I was really fortunate that they gave me an actual first and last name, the character. You know what I mean? Because it was really a small role. I had in the first show, we had this whole scene, but I only had one actual line. And then, I popped up again on the following season in a deli kind of thing. Scene's not about me. It was just a setup. And I think I probably had maybe 5 lines as Billy Jones the whole time, but it's a first and last name, so it sounds more substantial.
Plus, if people see the show and see you on because I'll show the clip, you are, and I mean this in a positive way, you are a scene stealer in a sense where people notice you stand out, they remember your character, and that's a lot to say when you only have a few lines, only episode in.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And that time period, man, you talk about like how Billy Jones was, hey, I deserve this. I'm a man, you're a woman, and blah, blah, blah. In the 50s and into the 60s was such a crazy time for comedy. It's like a changing of the guard. And that's what was cool to see, like Lenny Bruce portrayed in that and as the only actual factual character. Pretty, and
I don't even think that like Billy himself, like that character would have thought, oh, I'm entitled to this because I'm a man. It just is what it is. Like the industry and everything else. It was out of the ordinary for a housewife to even, do an open mic to begin with or whatever. He just, but it is what it is for her. Her character. This is one of the things that she had to bump up against, and Joan Rivers had to bump up against, and Phyllis Diller and people like that. And just and to this day,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And we're constantly seeing throughout all of the decades of history, all the way back to Mark Twain, Will Rogers, is comedians are always at the forefront of the change. Lenny Bruce is a great example. Carlin, Mom's Mabley, whoever. But how important do you think, in your opinion, stand-up comedy is to history, especially the times we're going through now?
Not very, honestly. I think I think a lot of times all this talk about cancel culture and what you can, this and that, and I don't know. I think there's a big level of self-importance that some comics put on it, and I bristle at being called, like, I've never wanted to be called an artist or some shit like that. Like I don't know. I'm weird about that. I think there's definitely, when it comes to the First Amendment, things like that. Yes, obviously there's an important role, and there's an important role for satirists and other things. I don't know. I just look at comedy as like, it's your job is just to go in front of X amount of people for X amount of time and entertain that group of people at that time. It's not necessarily, nothing makes me cringe harder than laughter, which is just, it's not really laughing. It's just clapping because you agree politically with the
like
thing.
A rally. Yeah,
that kind of shit. You're playing, all that kind of stuff. I just like go up and be funny and make people laugh. And there was only one George Carlin. There was only one Richard Pryor, right? There's at any one time there was only one Mark Twain. There's our generation, our time has only one Jon Stewart. We've only got, we have a few who do that, and then we have, it seems like, thousands who try and are middling at it, and they just end up, I don't know, it's too much time sitting on these chat rooms and other bullshit that comics get into and hearing all the navel gazing. I really don't think of, I don't think we're important. I'm not there was during the pandemic, they were not making us come into work. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
Yeah, we provide a service, and it's not, it's not, there's a reason that comedians are only about a half a rung above strippers. Because really, essentially, the only difference between us and taking our tits out is that we thought ahead of some material, ideally, and are sharing that. But really, what's your job is just to stand there and be a break in someone's day, be their entertainment, make them not think about the bullshit in the rest of the world. And if what it gets you out of your day-to-day rut and what gives you a break and a release is watching me on stage do what I do, that's fucking great. And if that's not your thing and it's going and seeing a pair of titties, that's great too, whatever. But I don't think we really move the needle that much. And I think we take ourselves too seriously, and I think segments of our audience take themselves too seriously. And there's we did a fundraiser thing once when I was working on that George Carlin Way campaign, and the whole title of it was Reverence for the Irreverent. We're supposed to be irreverent. We're not supposed to be out there petitioning Congress and changing the world and doing all this shit. It's like, we're telling dick jokes.
Yeah, but like, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I kind of on the fence. I think that also we do need comedians for certain things. Like you take your guy Jon Stewart, for example. He's possibly one of the ones that's going to go down in our history. When we're looking at all of these comedians who change things. You've worked with him on the Daily Show. He's obviously very political. He's been on Congress. He's said his 2 cents about the 9/11 guys, and more power to him. What's your take on like, and you also do the Colbert Show, warm up, very political guy. What's your take on what they're doing? I know it's not traditional stand up like they're not at the clubs, but
right. Well, I think to put it in perspective, I think going back also to what your previous question was, is that, yeah, I think ideally there is a element, an importance of, a spoonful of sugar to help some medicine go down. Okay. So when you are talking about Lenny Bruce putting out these ideas, and obviously in George Carlin, and is once in a 7 generations kind of a mind. And yeah, what he talked about in so many topics was downright prophetic. And so yeah, a spoonful of sugar helps get the message across, and can help move the needle politically and societally. And there is an importance for that. My point on the thing is that just because our industry has had a George Carlin, is currently has a Jon Stewart, or had of these are the ones in the generation, people who change it. Jon Stewart, what he did with the Daily Show for all those years was something that hadn't been done, something that made a whole generation of fans, people my age, the young people, so much more politically aware and engaged, and opened our eyes even more to the hypocrisy and the bold-faced hypocrisy of all of it. That, yes, that's all important. My point more is by and large is that those are, in a history of an industry that has had 5 million, we can come up with 5 that I'll go with are important,
Right.
Beyond that. So what I think Jon Stewart does is brilliant. I have absolutely, again, a show that I was such a fan of from day one of the Craig Kilborn days. Right
I
up,
liked it back then too. Yeah.
Right up until Trevor Noah took over, I was a huge fan of that show. I know, no disrespect to Trevor or whatever else they did, but at some point it changed.
Right. It wasn't what John made it, or it was a derivative of it. It wasn't the same. Didn't have the same impact.
I kind of feel like it's like I was fortunate enough to, well, what's the perfect prime example is the Patriots, right? They was amazing in this one thing, and then all of a sudden all the key players are gone, and it's not the same thing anymore, but they're wearing the same uniform, but it's just not the same. It's a growing period for the show to transition and to find its new legs. It's very similar. So, but I think in terms of what Jon Stewart accomplished, the talent that he discovered and put out there is fantastic. Just was,
I think I know you.
All of them, and to have gotten to work with those guys and be around it even a little bit was amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think I know what you're saying. Like that every comedian is trying to be this important comedian, and not every comedian is going to manifest that. Like,
well, I'm sorry, I don't think every comedian is trying to. I think that there's a consensus out there that so many comedians are trying to, or are either in their mind they're either a hero or a victim. You know what I mean?
Right,
and they're rallying against something. And I just it's one of my pet peeves is self-importance. And it's just one of those things that really always just gets to me.
Same here, man. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Self-importance and I think like arrogance are just my 2 biggest pet peeves.
And especially when I hear them do material on stage, and then I know them off stage, and not that they're different politically or something, but I know you're a fucking moron off stage. I played poker with you. I know you're not smart. We've been in cars together. This is bullshit. You're not going to change the world.
We are seeing a lot of like different comics coming up through the things, whether it's on the stand-up stage when you get guys like Chappelle or Chris Rock or Bill Burr, and then you got the podcasting comedians like Joe Rogan or WTF, I can't think of his name all of a sudden.
Mark Maron?
Mark Maron, thank you. Uh, who are also kind of pushing a narrative, and and Bill Maher, um, and Russell Brand. What's your take on all of the like that? There are so many comedians getting into politics or kind of taking on, like, I think they all took the Jon Stewart kind of ball and ran with it, or the Bill Maher ball and ran with it.
Many did. I think it's by and large, it's indicative more of the self-importance of the industry in and of itself. There's nothing grosser to me than like the Academy Awards or it's just such tragic bullshit now. It's like, there was this old joke. I forget what comic did it. It was when I was a kid. I remember seeing, but the thing about like the Academy Awards now is how every year it's historic. Oh my God. Like this is like, I haven't seen the Flower Moons, but it's the first Native American up for this. And it's just like, look, I'm not a fucking January 6er over here. And I'm not bitching that all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But it's like, there was Jackie Robinson. And then there was the first, the first Samoan transvestite to get an Oscar for best sound editing. We're not, and it's all that self-importance sniffing your own ass. And the thing with ever since the internet and it has come to what it is, that's the democratization of comedy. And I had to come to terms with that and understand it, because there was, there were comics, who were opening for me, who had been doing comedy for 2-3 years, and then all of a sudden we're doing stand-up on the Late Show. We're getting this, we're getting that, and it is because they fit a specific demographic,
right?
And
right.
So if you have X demographic that is in the news because they are being oppressed somehow or blah blah blah, that becomes trendy, and then right away the more liberal elements of the entertainment industry are going to go out of their way, to find someone that fits that role that they can put up and get into the pipeline. And then once they're in the pipeline, what'll end up happening is they'll just find their own niche of the audience. And you know what? That's awesome, because there's nothing wrong with having your own little slice of the pie of these people. And if you're of some, you're from Pakistan or some shit like that, and there's a whole community that doesn't really relate to traditional American stand-up, but you can make, God bless, go make your money, do whatever. It's not taking money out of my mouth, or food out of my mouth, money out of my pocket. So I'm really all for it. I don't, and as far as guys like, Bill Burr is a genius. Bill Burr is a killer stand-up, and he does what he does, and continues to do great work, and is getting more opportunities that are absolutely rightfully his. Go star in this and try to direct that and do what you want. You've earned it.
Do you think there's like guys like Bill Burr on stage or whatever, they or Louis C.K., they kind of rock the boat on purpose? Sometimes like their material will, Bill Burr has the famous bit about the baking the cake, comparing it to abortions. He's like, yeah, it would have been a cake if so he's deliberately stirring the pot in that regard to garner, do you think you need to do stuff like that to be noticed, because there is a lot of comedians, and if you're a white comic, for instance, like you said, to your point, you might not get fast tracked or get the movie or something like that in this day and age. Do you think you need to stand out in that way if you're an average everyday white comic?
No, I don't. I think you just need to be. Yeah, there is you do, when you do outrageous or stuff material, controversial, there is a look at me element, sure. I think the reason that guys like Bill Burr or whatever do that is for their own entertainment and for their own. There's a point when you just, and I'm going to sound like an asshole here because I'm going to use myself as an example, but there was a point where the material I'd been doing, the everything, blah, 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 I was at such a stride that I was crushing again and again and again and again. And it was time to, when you get to that point, it's time that you got to start putting more weight on the barbell, right? So I started, and I'll never forget, I did this out at the brokerage was when I did this.
Nice.
I started my material probably the first 5 or 6 minutes of my act of jokes about cheating on my wife, jokes about like 3 or 4 things that just kind of made my character look like a dick. I wanted them not to like me. I wanted to have to dig myself out of a hole. I had to make it challenging for myself. And I did that for quite a while. I would do material that was just, it wasn't to outrage or to offend. I just wanted to knock the audience a little bit. So yeah, there's that also that element of, well, all right, well, you don't want me to joke about this. I'm not supposed to joke about this. Well, let me find the way that I can joke about this and then prove to you that I can. You know, it was George Carlin who says, you know, what was it? You say you can never joke, rape's not funny, but then what was it? Can you picture Goofy raping Donald Duck or something like that? Right. You gotta find it. But that's the thing. It's like more. The problem is that when you do, other people are doing just edgy, just to be edgy, it's just that, again, it's that look at me thing, and that's the problem with the flip side of the democratization of comedy, and that for each group there's a home, is that for some that home is politically far on the right, and I it bothers me that sometimes that like I have to be careful of things I say on stage or do, because I don't want anybody to ever think that I'm anything close to that. You know what I mean? And I try to distance myself from it as much as possible. But there are people who go on, Joe Rogan's podcast, other podcasts, the compound media, that kind of there's guys who go and do Gutfeld. There's guys who do that shit. And again, it's their audience, but when that audience is bigoted and is hateful, and what you're doing is you're just feeding back hate, and bigotry, well, then I'm not on board for that. And I don't mind the Pakistani comic who's talking about the Pakistani mother and the Pakistani food, and their audience digs it because we've had that same life experience. When it's just some fucking entitled white dude who can't get laid, just bitching about the blacks and the Jews to other white douches and their big ass trucks. Fuck that noise. I got no time for it.
No, I hear you. When you're out and about, like in the scene as itself, the New York comedy scene, when you do run into comics like the Gutfeld comics, or like you said, or comics that have been through Rogan or whatever, is there lines, or do you guys all kind of get along, or is there like, oh, that guy, it's like, is there like a separation, or like we don't mess with that guy?
No, there's not. I mean, well, the Gutfeld guys are like, Joe DeVito is a very funny guy. We were asking like people from my class. Joe and I started at the same time.
Awesome. Great guy. Yeah.
I go back with him. Tom Shalhoub was always a very funny comic that I knew before he got into that. I don't blame, though. Gutfeld is one of those things. Like, I'm not gonna. Jamie Lissow and I have been buddies for a long time. It's like, I'm not gonna judge you for doing that. We all have to figure out how to make a living, how to get a crowd to follow us, and how to get word. And if that's what you want to do, go for it. That's one thing. I personally wouldn't do it, but I'm not going to judge you for that. There's only one comic who will remain nameless, who actually entered the Capitol and was it, so fuck that guy. But beyond that, I mean, political shit aside, with comics, and do what you want to do, and it really doesn't seem to be too much of an issue.
Is it weird on stage, like if you're doing, let's say you're just doing a set at the New York Comedy Club, and then right before you is a right-wing comic, and like, is it gonna? Do you think it's gonna end up becoming like back in the day? Tonight's urban night, or what ladies' night, or is it gonna be separated that way, or do you think you guys could all mix it up? Like, can a left comic go up after a right comic, and vice versa?
Definitely. Oh yeah, they definitely can. The thing is, like with it's an urban night, or it's this night or that night, that's again, it's just that same segmentation,
right? Yeah,
of different comedy and that kind of thing. So that is done as a marketing thing, or that's done by the clubs in and of themselves. But no, I mean, like I went on a couple of weeks ago, just as an example, and I was like, I made a joke about, it was about my, I've been ever letting my hair, after I do a TV role, I have to let my hair grow back out because they'll cut it to what they do. And so it's like longer now because I'm waiting for a gig to cut it back. It's easier to cut it back.
Right, yeah.
So I was talking about, like, after Maisel, and they give me a haircut that's appropriate to like 1960, and then they don't give a shit after that how it grows out. And I was like, and I'm like, so I wear hats now because I don't want to be this douchey middle-aged white guy with a bad haircut, because I'll figure that everybody looking at me is just thinking, where were you on January 6th? And that's the joke. And then the next dude who comes on stage is, I don't remember his name, but I mean, was just dressed up the part of just a good old boy, blah, blah, blah. And when he walked on stage, the first thing he said was, he goes, Kevin mentioned January 6th, and poof, I appeared. And he got a big laugh, and that was it, And it's not like point counterpoint where I'm going up and I'm gonna make all these jokes that are from a liberal standpoint, and then he's gonna come back up and refute. It's not that.
Right. No. Yeah, it's just such polarizing times where I've never seen before, where there literally are teams where, if you're on this side, even if you think maybe there's some truth to this side, you're still not gonna, you know what I mean? It's just so there's a line in the sand, and I think that, comedians have the best bullshit meters, and and I'm hoping that they could all kind of make sense of everything somehow, some way.
Yeah, you do get a sense of people from being on stage, and of their, if you're good at crowd work and that kind of shit, that means that you've developed the ability to size somebody up in a second based on a whole alphabet's list of physical and cues, and so it's easy enough to tell.
Yeah, because you could start to read people.
Yeah, and you tell when somebody's full of shit. You can tell when they don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. You can tell when they're, it's easy, and you can tell when you're just on stage and they're in the audience, if their posture changes, if you did just a little. Okay, here's one I would do when I was at the Daily Show, or the Nightly Show, which was a very liberal late night show. And I would say to the audience about, one of the things was about the importance of them being loud and giving energy to the show, and all that is noise. So I would be like, example, like, if I ask a question, like, who here is from out of town? And, some people would raise their hands, some would clap, and I would tell the people, I was like, okay, right there, don't raise your hand. You have to make noise. We can't, raising your hand does nothing. I'm like, and then what I would say to them is like, you're not wrong. It's okay. It's just, there's a time and a place. And if you want to go somewhere and be around a couple of hundred strangers and throw your right hand in the air, by all means, go to a Trump rally. And of course it would crush, and they would love it. So at a comedy club, I would work that in once in a while, if the audience was, whatever, and I would just, if somebody raised their hand, it was a go-to and a stock one. And something just like that, you would see people's assholes tighten up right away. And just that, just that, okay, all right,
that who's who in the audience, right?
You know who you've offended. You know exactly who you've offended. And it is what it is. Right. Everybody's going to get offended about something, so
Yeah, and being in Manhattan and working in the city, you get all types of tourists coming in and out, all types of New Yorkers going in there, and like you said, to your earlier point, people just want to forget about all this stuff and just enjoy their life and kind of laugh and all of that. And there is such a fine line, because I think there also is audience that wants to hear you bash, January 6ers, or they want to hear the other team bash Biden or whatever it might be. Do you get a sense of that sometimes they want you to go political?
I'm sure they do. But if you're on a show in the city, and let's say there's 10 comics on the bill, right? Everybody's doing between 10 and 15 minutes. It's kind of if you're the booker and you did your job right, and this is when I coach and I teach, I talk about this, is how each comic is a different character. And it's just like you're going to see a play and all you're seeing is 10 different characters give 10 different monologues, and it's those cues that you pick up. Well, the way this guy is dressed and that he looked like a good old boy, he could say that "Poof, I appeared" line and it would crush because it's already been established. Right. So if you want to be the political comic, if you want to be doing that kind of stuff, and again, this is stuff I tell my students. It's like, well, first of all, you got to understand that your material is going to have a very short shelf life. I have some of my A-list material I have unabashedly used for 25 years, has made it into the act, and I can always pull it out if I need it. It's evergreen. That's the point of having it.
Right.
It's, everything changes. And if you're doing political stuff, you're almost by definition going to alienate half your audience. Not that they'll walk out, but to the point that they're not going to be, and the other half is just going to give you that laughter that I was talking about.
Right. Yeah.
So on a show of 10 people, very often that'll happen is the one person's going to come up and want to do their 10 minutes of all political shit. It's generally, it's not going to be the set that crushes that night the hardest. It's not, but that same comic who's establishing that they do that and that's their bona fides, if they're also working out in the podcast arena, if they're also getting exposed into those circles, they can find their audience. And then when they go out to headline somewhere, or they go out to do a coffee shop or a small theater, then they're attracting their audience. And then you talk about what you want to talk about.
Right,
and you have that. You just got to figure out, you're going to take your lumps trying to do it in the main scene. Because the other part about doing political material is not only does it have a short shelf life, but you have to gamble that the audience is informed enough to know what the fuck you're talking about. You know what I mean? These people are here on vacation in New York. They didn't watch MSNBC last night. They are on top of the news. So a reference to something that happened in the Supreme Court this morning is not going to crush tonight.
Right.
That's another reason. So this is why we have one in a generation who's really great, one or two. It's because it's very difficult. It's very difficult. You have to be very smart. You have to walk this fine line. You have to, so that's why it's so tough. Yeah.
This is it. 35 years old, and this is my fucking accomplishment. It's bullshit. It sucks. Are you kidding me? I was feeling cocky about myself, so I went online just to see what other people had accomplished by the time they reached my age. I never felt like a bigger goddamn loser in my entire life. Let me give you some perspective on this. By the time he was 35 years old, Kurt Cobain had already been dead for 8 years.
Kevin Bartini. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it. Tell everybody again where they could find you and follow you and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, kevinbartini.com. Social media, anything is just at Kevin Bartini. Basically, it's if you're not following me, you're following my dad, and it'll be easy to figure out. And yeah, and thanks for having me on. And I love governors, and it was the end of the summer. I don't know. It's been probably 8-9 months since I did one of the governor's rooms, so I do want to get back out there. And when I do, love to do a seminar and whatever else. And yeah, I'd be happy to come on your show anytime and good hang.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're at the main room in Levittown, let me know because we have a podcast studio right in the back there. We'll get you in there, and it'll be awesome just have you in there live with us.
Thanks again for having me on.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate you.
No problem. Have a
Kevin Bartini, everybody.